What's up, everybody? I am here today with Katie Chung Hua. She is a fitness and health expert, personal trainer, fitness model, and a podcast host. It's called Built, and she talks with athletes, entertainers, and entrepreneurs about how they were built and why. Today, we get to flip the script and find out how Katie was built. So Katie, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you for the lovely intro.
As we were saying right before this, I'd stumbled upon you when I was doing some research for the podcast on Instagram, and I came across a Built, and I noticed you had interviewed some prestigious people. You had on Marquise Lee, you had on Linda Cohn, and as I was listening to that episode, you had mentioned about you guys were talking about how you should reach out to people on social media who have a higher influence, a higher prestige, and so when I sent you that message, I was like, oh, I really hope so, because I think that'd be a good way to connect with Vegas and inspire people to go on beyond your own means.
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody needs to be networking and reaching out to people, especially finding your niche and how people have perfected it, and just ask them for advice. So many people want to help. I mean, when you said Linda Cohn, when I messaged her, I was so scared, and I was like, you know what can I lose? She'll either not answer me or just say no. And she got back to me and she's like, yeah, I'd love to. And the biggest thing is she was like, I respect people who hustle and who want to reach out and who work hard for it. And that's exactly why I wanted to do your interview. And I just thought, man, that's such a great piece of advice for anybody. And just acknowledging that hustle was great.
It's admirable, especially in Vegas, a city that we're in, where it's basically built off of the hustle culture. Now it's going to transition a little bit more into the digital nature of hustle, where you can go in and DM people. And it's interesting with podcasting is I think now is the best time to start a podcast, because it's the best way to network with people. And you get to have these intimate conversations of, an hour, however long your podcast is. Whereas before you had a podcast, nobody knew really what your relevancy was or kind of what your mission was. So it's a great time to do that and to build your brand.
Yes, I agree 100%. I think that with podcasting, the only downfall, because we are in this pandemic, is being able to talk to someone face to face and being able to interact more. And you have for me anyway, with my podcast, you have the technology side and internet connection and people trying to figure out how to even get on Zoom. But besides that, I think that people have a lot of time at home, and they're, if they're driving or cleaning, they're listening to podcasts, and it's become such a popular thing.
It is. So they say about 75 to 80% of podcast listeners listen to it through a smartphone. So it shows that they are doing those tasks around the house, or they're commuting to work. When I first started the podcast back in April, the listenership of the space was actually down because everyone was stuck at home, and when everyone's at home, they're more focused on the news and what's happening. And so I think that's kind of what's spiraled into this mental health crisis, which we have today.
Yes. I mean, don't even get me started. I think that's such a huge problem right now. And I see it with even very successful friends and people who, are normally very happy, and they're just, for lack of a better word, they're just bored, and they start to think and they start to overthink, and then there's not much that you can do right now in some careers. And so a lot of people are just sitting and they're panicking and they're trying to figure out what to do. And I think it just eats at them, and just the people that live by themselves and who can't sleep people. It's become really, really tough for a lot of very strong people.
You kind of lose your sense of way, or for better words, a lack of purpose, which is kind of what everyone's always sought after to be, even though you don't really know what it is. But at least when you're in just a job making money, it gives you purpose, and people forget that socialization aspect to it with your coworkers. And out here in Vegas, if you work on the Strip, you're around hundreds or thousands of people every day. So it's pretty much limitless opportunity to connect with people. Whereas now when you're at home and in quarantine, and it seems like it's kind of starting to happen in some other cities across the country, now that we've gone through it once, people are like, oh no, they know what it brings. It's not just financial hardship, but also like mental strain on your personality as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone through it. I'm definitely not a person that I've ever thought to be depressed or down. And it has made me have to take a step back and just kind of reevaluate a lot of things. I mean, we talked about even the girls here in Las Vegas who are just waiting for clubs to open up. And yeah, they're open up as lounges, but maybe 5 people are working. I don't think it's going to be functioning club for another year or so. But people need to have a plan. And when you're just sitting there waiting and you're sitting there kind of dependent so much on a job or a career without looking outside the box, that can be very, very difficult.
It's very stressful. So I know your podcast, you started this towards the beginning of the pandemic. Is it something that you had thought of prior to the pandemic happening, or was it something that you had some sort of epiphany while you're at home?
No, I've actually wanted to start this for a very long time. It was just kind of getting the concept together. There's a lot of ideas that I've come across of like YouTube videos or vlogs that I really wanted to do. And this was just, it gave me a lot of time to actually execute it. It was just the fact that I couldn't, like, I still don't have the show where I want it to be because of the pandemic. You know, we want to be safe, we want to follow the guidelines. So I'm not trying to see a lot of people in person and make other people uncomfortable by being around them. But for right now, I'm doing what I can. And I've been really fortunate to get the people that I have on my show. And I'm just kind of hoping that we kind of get this controlled so that I can get to where I am. But I have capitalized on this time by being able to perfect kind of what I want, even though it's not there yet. So yeah, I've had this idea for a very long time. I've just had the time to actually start it because I just thought, you know what else am I doing? I might as well just do it. It's not going to be perfect, but right now there's a lot of people at home. There's a lot of people that can listen and they have a lot more time than they have before. So maybe this is a good time to just kind of get it started.
Isn't it strange how we put up these mental barriers for these irrational reasons why we don't start a podcast or start that business that we've always wanted to do? And once you mentally decide that you want to do it and you start going through the steps and you look at the other side of that wall that you put up, you're like, wow, this should have never existed. Like, this was so much simpler than I thought it was. And then once it starts unraveling and taking off, you start having these more ideas and becoming creative, and it grows. And then you just build this confidence from not from like this a little amount that you've had before.
Oh yeah, I should have done this years ago. I don't know. I think that a lot of people just think that things need to be perfect in order to do it. I mean, even workout videos, when I'd post workout videos, I wanted them to be perfect. And then I started doing my research and watching other people. And I'm like, this girl just filmed a workout in her bedroom and it's gotten thousands of views. Why am I holding up on this? It doesn't have to be perfect. I think that we're our worst critics. And so we think that people are going to judge us and we hold up on so many things. And this podcast was just one of them for me, and I'm glad that I finally did it, but it will be better.
I enjoy it. You've had on a Jabberwocky, you had on a local DJ, some NFL athletes, Linda Cohn. Like, I think you have a great foundation laid for the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm hoping to do more in person. So, like I said, down the road, hopefully we'll have a little bit more interaction.
I try to push in-person interviews, but with COVID and some people have had it, some people don't. Are you asymptomatic? Are you not? It's just this weird gray area. So we have to make this do for now.
Yeah, I understand that. I know because I mean, it depends on people personally too, because I know that if I got it, then I would be fine. I would probably be okay. I'm not around anyone that's at high risk. But who knows who I'm around that's around people that are at high risk. So I'm trying not to be selfish and trying to think of others. And I think that that's kind of the mindset that people should have. Because I think that people are getting impatient or they're bored and they just want to hang out with their friends. But you kind of got to look at the bigger picture. I mean, we got to find a solution either one way or the other. We can't sit in this limbo for 5 more years.
There is hope on the other side. There's a vaccine coming. It seems like people are starting to understand how the virus works a little bit better, and to be, just wear a mask is as simple as it can be. So it is a bright future. but I do want to start from the beginning. Let's deconstruct a little bit of how you were built. Let's go back to, let's say, high school Katie. What was the mentality of high school Katie, and what kind of activities were you involved with?
My life was consumed with hockey. So I grew up playing hockey. I started actually pretty late. I was 14, but my dad and my brother already played. And I was so focused on, first of all, I think I just was a natural competitor. And so once I found something that I liked, that was my life and that consumed me. I was gone almost every weekend playing tournaments. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to get a scholarship, go to college, and I wanted to be the best. And even when I was younger than that, for some reason, I wanted to be the first woman everything. President, motocross racer, you name it, whatever. I wanted to be the first girl to do everything. And so when I found hockey, everyone was so nice and so accepting. So many people gave me gear and whatever. That was my life. And I was on the ice, I'm not kidding you, every single day. My first season, I played on 3 different teams, and that was all that I did. So me, it was just competition. I went to prep school my senior year for hockey at a school called National Sports Academy. And so hockey was number 1, and school unfortunately came second. But, like my assistant coach was my calculus teacher. So it was kind of all intertwined. But that was my life. I was just sports, and that's it.
What position did you play?
I played goalie.
Oh, okay. You're the main defense of the team. You got
Well,
quick reflexes.
yeah. And you know what? I did that because, first of all, I think my dad and my brother just wanted somebody to shoot on. And so they kind of talked me into it. But honestly, I think that I would have done a lot better if I wasn't a goalie. I don't have that mindset, and I hate saying that. I'm more of an aggressor. Like, I think that I would have been a lot better as a forward and making the plays. And you have to be so strong mentally to be a goalie. And a lot of people joke about how weird they are. And they used to joke on my team that I was too normal to be a goalie. And I think that you just got to not let things get to you, and you get goals scored on you, and you're carrying the weight of the team. And it's a lot of pressure. And I think that you really have to kind of be outside yourself and a lot of times during games to not let that affect you. And I think that I just wasn't that person. I let that affect me. I let that weigh on me. And I felt like a lot of games were my fault. But then also you get to win the games, you get to have shutouts and you can win for your team, which is the flip side of that. But I've skated out since, and I've really loved it even more. And so I wish that I would have skated out more. As a young person, I looked more as an opportunity. So I played on, like I said, 3 teams because people always need a goalie.
Wow. When you were playing on these 3 teams, were they club teams? Were they some sort of regional collective of athletes and superstars?
So I played on, the first team I ever played on was actually a women's, an older team, just like a beer league team, and they were awesome. And then as I was going into the season, I played for a boys team, like a boys club team, like a U15. And then the girls team started, and they were a U19 because there weren't a lot of girls at the time. And then the next few years I joined my high school team. So I was on a boys team in high school, still with the girls travel team. And then I would play random beer league teams to fill in.
Wow, fierce competitor playing with the boys.
Yes, actually, I mean, if you compare it to my team in New York, I think the girls team could have beat a lot of the boys teams in the West Coast. So there's some good hockey in the East Coast for sure.
Yeah. Hockey's still so I'm still so unfamiliar with it. I never really watched it. Now that the Golden Knights are out here, I tend to watch those games, but only. But it is more fast paced. I played football and ran track in high school, so I'm more about that action. Not really much of a baseball and basketball guy, but maybe one day out here, the West will adopt hockey in a high school fashion.
Yeah, it's definitely makes its way over from the East Coast, and California has some good teams. I think a lot of it comes from roller hockey, but besides, sorry, my dog is barking.
You're okay.
She's like a fierce protector of the house. So.
Hey, she's the goalie for your house.
She is. She's obnoxious. I'm sorry. So, I think that like California hockey is very good because of roller hockey, and it's just a different game. But I would love to play roller hockey, and I think that's pretty big here in Vegas too.
Yeah, it's taking the West Coast version of it because unfortunately there's no ice rinks or limited in a limited fashion, I guess.
Yeah, it's too expensive here in this heat.
So after high school, what were your next steps in your progression of life?
So I actually got burnt out after playing at NSA, and I came back home. I got some offers to play in some D1 schools and a couple other scholarships for some D3, but I wanted to come home and kind of reevaluate. So I'm from Idaho, so I went back to Idaho and I started going to school at Boise State, and then I decided to just kind of play club hockey. I was kind of over it. And my dad is huge into, you need to be active, you need to be involved in something. And he had always been in the fitness industry as far as like, he just liked to work out. That was something that he really enjoyed. And so he asked me if I'd be interested in ever doing a bodybuilding show. And this was before abs were cool. Like this was back in the day when girls were like, do you have an eating disorder? I don't understand like why you're dieting for a show. I don't understand. And so I thought I'd try it and did a local bodybuilding show in Idaho. I was sponsored by bodybuilding.com, which was only like 4 years old at the time. So it was a very, very new industry. And that kind of opened up my eyes to the fitness industry and training and kind of how you can manipulate your body. And it was really cool to see and transition and kind of see how, even as a hockey player, because I was still skating at the time, when I was getting in that peak shape, how I was performing so much better. And so I kind of fell in love with the process.
Fitness world now that you look at how much it's grown over the last 15, 20 years, the pinnacle of Olympia out here, you see all these athletes and now these nutrition brands, and everyone has a protein powder above their fridge. You can see I've got one too. So it's amazing to see. When you first competed, were you expecting any sort of results? Was it something that you had the mentality that you wanted to win, or was it something that you just wanted to try and just kind of become new to some sort of industry?
I think just the way that I am, obviously, I always want to win. But I was very open to, I do not understand this industry at all. But I can say that after I competed in that show, people who aren't familiar with bodybuilding, there's different categories. And when I competed, there wasn't bikini. So there was figure, and then there was pretty much bodybuilding. So figure now is a very, very muscular and big. And so what the IFBB did is they actually implemented a division called bikini. And so a couple years after I did that figure show, because I was like, you know what, not for me. Like I'm super lean. I hated dieting. This was just like really intense on my body. They introduced a bikini show, and I'm not kidding you, girls that work at day club could compete in the bikini when this first started. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it. Why not? And so I competed, and I did pretty well at a regional show. So I tried at a national show, did pretty well at that, and was like, you know what, I'm just going to keep trying. And my goal is to just get my IFBB pro card. So I did until I competed until I got my card. And then I was like, you know what, that's pretty much just where I want to be. I just want that credibility. I want people to know that I know what I'm talking about. And for me personally, I wanted to know that I could do that because that was my industry. And that was giving me the credibility that I think I needed, or I felt like I needed, to show people I knew what I was talking about and that I was a professional in this industry.
When you got that IFBB card, what kind of opportunities presented themselves that didn't happen when you won an amateur round?
You know, as far as opportunities, I think that's where it was a little misconstrued on my part. So I thought I needed that. And that's why I said, for me personally, I felt like I needed that credibility. I don't think that you do, because there's so many people out there that are very knowledgeable about competing or the health and fitness industry. And it didn't really open up any more opportunities. But for me, I think it gave me the confidence to say, hey, I'm a pro, I can do this. And it was more of like a self victory for me rather than magazines didn't care. Maybe some of them would be like, oh, hey, she's a pro, let's put her in the magazine because it's cool and she has a title, and maybe that was an opportunity. But as far as, I guess, training people, or it really didn't change much.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with a few people on the podcast before about the accreditation fallacy. And basically what I mean by this is like a bunch of the governing organizations of either colleges or the fitness industry or anything of that nature, they offer these services or these credentials to basically establish this person as accredited. But most of the times you don't even need these pieces of paper to show that your services or your grit basically establishes this nature. So it's something that you were basically saying is you don't need the piece of paper. Like, you look great, people understand that, and the science behind it. So it's something that I think is becoming more popular into fruition now.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side of things, I've seen a lot of people get their pro card and they don't know anything. And they can give out advice and people think they know what they're talking about because they have that pro card, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're professional, because we all hire coaches to help us, with our food and with our posing, with our training. So I don't think it necessarily weighs as much as I personally thought it did.
What type of trainer did you seek after? Are there specific types of trainers as for I guess bikini?
So it's kind of funny. I don't know how many people really know this industry. And mind you, I haven't competed in 6 or 7 years, so I'm sure some of this has changed, but it's a very political industry. And so when I hired a trainer, I actually would consider him almost like a lobbyist. So he helped me here and there with my diet. And when you are competing, you're very much removed. Like, you don't think about it. You're kind of a robot. And so he helped me with my show prep the last 4 weeks, as far as cutting carbs, looking at me saying, let's add 30 more grams of carbs a day or whatever. And then we're going to carb load the night before. But he also knew a lot of judges and knew a lot of shows that I should compete in. And that's kind of where you need a coach, AKA someone who can play the politics game. And that was after I already got my card. I did like a couple pro shows. And so I hired him for the pro shows because I just wanted to do better, because I saw all these girls winning all the time. And the first pro show I did, 2 out of the 5 judges even looked at me because they already knew who the top 5 were. So that's where you kind of got to play that game. So that's why I hired him.
While all the contestants are playing 2D chess, you're playing 3D chess.
Yeah.
So it's so smart. He's like, I didn't even think of this, but how you view it is your trainer's almost like a pseudo agent for you. It's like it's giving, you're sharing credibility with them, and they have credibility with the trainers. So it's so strange.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's unfortunate. And the political game, it seems like it taps into every industry as well. I know when you moved out here to Vegas, just speeding it ahead a little bit, I saw on your profile that you worked at one of the nightclubs out here. And I know very well that it's a very political game out there.
Yes, I think it is. I like to say that I'm a very real person. And even when it came to my fitness, when people get their pro card, a lot of them have to join teams. So it's kind of confusing to explain, but a lot of these teams, their girls will win. And I was one of the few girls that got their pro card without joining a team or having a political stance. And so that to me was an accomplishment. And so I feel like my personality, I kind of took that to other industries. I was very real. And I think I just befriended people based on that. And I was just kind of very open and honest. And so if people didn't like me, like, that was fine. But you know what, I'm going to work hard. And if you don't want me to work here, I'll work somewhere else. And that was kind of my stance on it. But yes, they're very much politics. Managers like you, they don't like you. When I interviewed for Hakkasan, that was the club that was opening. It was brand new. And obviously, you know how it is. Everyone wants to work at the new clubs. So that's where you make the money. And I just remember they asked me why I wanted to work there. And I was like, to make money. Isn't that why all of us want to work here? And I think that was what they liked. So
Yeah, you have to be upfront. That's the industry. It's crazy. I have been interviewed on a few Vegas podcasts, and they ask me what it's like working in a Vegas nightclub, a mega nightclub. And I asked them, what do you picture it to be? And they're like, some sort of craziness and politics and backstabbing and money flying everywhere. And I was like, to be honest, it's kind of like that.
yeah. Well, yeah, okay.
It's what happens when you throw alcohol around with a lot of money and a lot of prestige and people trying to jockey for positions. And I kind of compare it to being a busser and a server. It's kind of like having a podcast where you're basically cutting all the gatekeepers out and you're talking to that person directly with you. So it's your time to shine for a few hours and try to get into that person's mind or the head of the table.
I don't know about you, but when I moved to Vegas, I was, wide-eyed all the time. And then you start to just kind of get numb to all the craziness. And people will ask me stories. I'm like, oh yeah, well, yesterday. And I tell them the story and they just can't believe it. And I think it's funny because you become so numb to this wildness and these stories that it's just like an everyday thing to you now.
Yeah, it's like the desensitization of anything, sexual prowess, large amounts of money, the way that people act. You're basically like a glorified babysitter is kind of how I call the position.
Right.
But you're also with some sales attached to it. Now, don't get me wrong, the industry is awesome. I loved working in it. Graveyard shift sucks. If someone says that they like working graveyard, I'm labeling you as a psychopath because there's no way in hell that you enjoy going to bed at 6 a.m. and waking up at noon, but also waking up 3 or 4 times because of the insomnia that's attached to it. Like, there's no way.
I know. Isn't that the nightlife is very, very interesting. And it's very hard to have a normal life when you work nightlife because, for me, Thursday through Saturday, I'm working nights. And then Monday, I'm trying to wake up at a decent time. And my body just was not having it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's strange. I'm interested to see what the transition is. I know like now they're doing lounges. I've heard it's not really as successful as they would like it to be, which is a pain. I guarantee you there's going to be a record turnout at day club auditions because the day clubs are allowed to be open. So you're probably going to get 7,000 people coming in to apply for those very limited positions.
Well, and now Resort World is opening, which I find is interesting to be opening during this pandemic or how they're going to do that. But I know that a ton of industry people have been trying to get auditions there as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, they have Resort World, Stadium Swim. I've seen a bunch of friends kind of hop over to that position. It is going to become a little bit saturated. I don't know if I'm going to go back. I'm kind of weighing everything out. Do you have any ambition to return to the industry?
Not really. I think I've had this conversation even recently. Someone asked me what I miss about that industry. And for me, a lot of it's the camaraderie. I really, really built some great relationships with people throughout the years. And I really loved going to work to hang out with them and to see them. And they became more like family because you're working together all the time. You see them all the time. You're working with crazy guests that you're kind of starting to confide in them. And so I would really like to have that. I've kept in touch with a lot of my friends that fortunately I've been able to still see them all, but I miss that a lot. Also, just as a business perspective, when are you going to have the opportunity to be in front of somebody to a specific caliber as the guests that come into a club? Say, I don't know, the owner of a sports team, a sports athlete, a doctor, tech savvy person, someone who owns whatever, works for Nike. I've built so many relationships solely based on people who have come into a club where I've capitalized on that for other areas of my life. And so that aspect is something that's very good that I miss, is being able to be in front of someone. Like I met someone who invented one of the biggest apps ever. And I remember just joking and saying, hey, well, if you want to make me a fitness app, like go right ahead. And he hands me his card. And so when are you ever going to be able to do that besides a place like that?
the opportunities are literally plentiful on the Strip, and something that the Strip doesn't get credit for. Vegas and Nevada generally is always in the bottom education. It's usually like 48, 49, or 50 in terms of states. But what isn't a statistic is the amount of entrepreneurs and business advocates that that stem from the Strip. Because like you're saying, where else on the Strip can you either get in front of these clients, or you can make six figures working a few nights a week? And then hopefully, as long as you don't give it back, which some people, I'm guilty of it too. I've done it before, but as long as you don't give it back, you can take that money and go build something of substantial value.
Oh yeah, I've seen girls like you said, if you can keep your head on straight. I've seen girls going to nursing school full time and they graduate with zero debt because you can work 3 days a week and you can make, like you said, six figures and have no debt. And so yeah, it's a great place to get ahead. And I always tell people that if you can come in here and be disciplined and work, you can get ahead in so many areas. I know that I've taken my money that I've made and I pay photographers or videographers or invested it in some things that I need for another area and other careers in my life.
It's smart to do. It took me a few years to figure that out. Everyone gets caught up in the Vegas cycle, is what I like to call, where you just continuously go out. You have a good night, you wake up hangover, and then somebody texts you, and you're like, "Oh, I'm going out with this tech founder," and you're like, "Oh crap, I need to go out and have with them." And next thing you know, it's like 10 a.m. and you're out at bars, and you're like, "God, what am I doing?"
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's something to do every single night and day. It doesn't matter what day it is. But I mean, when I first started working in the club, I started spending money because it was the first time in my life that I really had a lot of disposable income. So yeah, it took me a minute too to kind of be like, no, I got to save and be smart about it. But I definitely, bought myself some stuff.
Yeah, the allure of Vegas is either you can get rich quick, there's temptation to, find a significant other for the night, or to build some sort of relationship that would have never stemmed from it. When you moved out here to Vegas, what was that kind of the inspiration or idea to come out here?
Growing up in Idaho, I knew I always wanted to leave and just do something more. My end game was to be in LA. And I thought it was kind of intimidating to just pick up and move from Idaho to go to LA. And I actually know a lot of people from Idaho that live here in Vegas. And so knowing that, and there's a lot of fitness people here, and it's a very easy move. The cost of living is very comparable. I just thought, you know what, maybe this can be a pit stop on the way to LA. So I moved here and fortunately got a job right away at a day club and was able just kind of to get things going very quickly. And then eventually I did move to LA and it just wasn't for me. And I came back to Vegas being grateful for what it had given me and just found out that this was a better fit for me than LA.
It's smart to have that awareness that sometimes things don't work out the way that you want it, and to be able to pivot. That's like the commonality that I find with a lot of the successful entrepreneurs that I've had on the show is there's a part of their business that wasn't effective, it wasn't making money, or it was causing a lot of pain. And instead of beating a dead horse, they said, all right, we're going to go this different direction. And it usually turns out for the better. And so leaving LA is a smart decision. I know a ton of people that end up getting stuck out there pursuing the fabulous Hollywood life. And then they end up, serving at two different jobs, and they're stuck in this rent, and they keep re-signing their lease over and over, and it really, really never pans out. But
Yeah.
Vegas is like the happy medium for all of them.
It is the happy medium. But if you want to talk about hustlers, man, I respect a lot of those people in LA because they are there and they are ruthless and they want what they want. And that's very inspiring. But for me, it just wasn't for me. I did some auditions and for commercials and movies and stuff. And I realized that I just like to be myself. And I would rather find a way to be on camera and be on radio or be whatever it is, more myself, and be able to express that than to be doing these commercials and stuff all the time. I didn't like it.
Speaking of auditions, in one of your podcasts that I listened to, you said that you had auditioned for the WWE.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I actually talked to, so when I got recruited, I was recruited at a fitness expo. And so I don't know if you know, but a lot of the WWE people have been in the fitness industry like the Lexi girl, and I'm sorry, I'm not well versed in WWE, but Lexi, I actually competed against her one of the years in a bodybuilding show. And a lot of my other friends know her as well. But I got recruited there and thought to myself, okay, you know what? I'm going to try it. I actually talked to a couple other professional wrestlers and they filled me in on the lifestyle. And at the time, I had a really good sponsor. I was competing. I had a lot of things going on. And they told me, they're like, hey, this is really going to just consume your life. Like this is it. And you're going to be in Orlando traveling and doing shows all the time. And so you got to really kind of think if this is what you want. And I thought, I'm just going to go because I want the opportunity. I want this experience. I want to be able to see what it's about. So I went, and it was so fun and physically so demanding. I went, and I think it was for a week. I want to say at least 4 days. And they room you up with somebody and you go, and there's like no preparation. I remember they do like a front flip and you land on your back. Like you just jump and land on your back. And they're like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. So go ahead and go. And you're just kind of like, all right, so I guess we're going to do this. And by the end of it, we were all so incredibly sore just because they just throw you in the mix. But there's a time where at the end, and I think if I knew about it, I probably wouldn't have gone to the audition, that you have to do your pitch, basically your character. And not only do you do it in front of all the girls that are there, there's like 40 girls, but you do it in front of the other 100 people that are all the guys that are auditioning, plus the coaches, plus you're on video because Triple H and other people are watching you live. It was so terrifying. And I tell everyone to this day that that's the most terrifying thing that I've ever done. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I just got up there, and my character was pretty much like the cocky, I can do anything, I'm going to take over character, because that's just the first thing that came to mind. And everyone else was like singing and performing. And I'm like, shit, well, that's all I got. But the scout came over and talked to me, and he said, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And I said, I love this physical aspect. I love just like doing these flips and jumps and all this stuff. And he kind of was just trying to fill me out to see what I wanted to do. And he just said, if you were a 20-year-old girl and you had nothing going for you, I think that you should pursue this. And he was like, but you have a lot going on, and you're going to have to put that behind you if you want to do this. And I kind of gave him the answer then that I really liked it, but I don't think it was for me to do this in the long haul.
Wow, what an experience. I know wrestlers, and I've seen a few documentaries that complain about how hard it is on your body, where they're working 9-10 months straight. You just go from show to show, and there's really no time to recover. So I know that that's a detrimental, but I didn't even think about, I always had the thought that WWE assigned a personality to that person. I didn't even comprehend that you're the one that's in charge of that personality.
Well, maybe later, maybe that was just kind of them seeing our creativity and kind of seeing what we had to offer. But I think that, because when you go in and you get signed, you're now part of the farm. So you could be in the farm for 3 years, or you could be there for 3 days. Maybe they're looking for an Asian girl with this sort of personality. And so then they're going to pull me out and I get to go to the WWE. But that's another thing that they told me. They're like, there's no guarantee that you're actually going to make it. You might be part of the farm where you're putting together shows and breaking down the shows after, and you're doing this, 5 times a week until you get recruited. So yeah, you don't know really kind of any sort of definitive future in that.
Oh, that's the fear, I think, that everyone has, all athletes of all natures, is getting stuck in the developmental league and never being able to break out and have that rock star lifestyle or that athletic, career that everyone wants to have. Because of course you want to be in front of people, which is also terrifying to think. And I used to be a big WWE fan when I was younger, and you come out and feel the energy and you're in front of 20,000 people live. Like it's a completely unfounded fear of stage fright.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think about if I stayed with it, what would happen. I don't know. But like I said, I don't know if that's for me.
Yeah,
More of a performance.
again, it's, it's another pivot. At least you try it. Then that's something that a lot of successful people have, is that trial and error mindset, where if it does, you have to try it and kind of go through the emotional ties that come with that, whatever it is, sport or interest or business, and kind of understand what goes into that mindset and then make that determination there, rather than just looking at it for face value and deciding, yeah, that's not for me. Because a lot of successes that I find with people are always things that were kind of a side hobby or just like a random occurrence, and then it kind of evolved from there.
Yeah.
So interesting. As we progress, that was WWE. When did you try out for that? It
Oh, I don't even know when that
was
was.
a little while ago.
It was a while ago. Yeah.
And
It
then
was a while ago.
and then you continued to work in the industry up until Built. Was there anything in between on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. So, well, I actually started doing, so we can back up a little bit. Before I moved to Vegas, I was working as an athletic trainer and a personal trainer. And then I dropped the personal training, and I was also doing physical therapy assistant. So I was very well into that. And I also worked. And then I think after that, I worked at bodybuilding.com. And that's really what kind of opened doors for me. Is I was going to college and I asked them if they would take on an intern. And so I worked in their marketing department as an intern. And they were growing so fast that they offered me a position when my internship was over after that semester. And at that time, expos and everything was very new. And so they were using employees to work their expos. And so that's kind of how I started getting into the fitness modeling side. And I kind of stuck with that and then started competing. And then I was doing well enough with my sponsorships and competitions that I was able to move from Idaho to Vegas and to continue that. And then I was doing the bottle service on the side with that as well. And then I started doing more appearances, or whatever you want to call it, for the expos, and competing and sticking with my sponsorships, which I still have today. And then integrate social media. And then you have social media where you get different sponsors, you get paid posts, you get to promote your app, which I've had for the last 4 or 5 years. And that's something that's been really good. And so that transition was more from like doing the expo work and the appearances, and doing more of the social media influencing and kind of monetizing that.
What is there, we talked about like a political space, as there was in the fitness industry and the nightlife industry. And once you step into the big, I guess we call it the big game because that's what's popular now, and the influencing game, is there a political aspect to that as well?
I don't think so. I think if anything, it's probably more of a fair space than anything else, because you can't really control like followers or anything like that. You can buy them, and then you get the repercussions of being shadow banned. So you can try, but I don't think there's any sort of politics that go into that. I mean, you can get verified based on who you know. Maybe you're getting verified because you know somebody at a certain company. That's about as far as I know for politics. The only bad thing, and I don't know if you can call that politics, is a lot of girls especially get followers because of TNA, and that's what's growing accounts, unfortunately, today. And to capitalize on that, they start with the TNA, and then they turn that into valuable information, where that now they have a lot of followers. So now they start pumping out the good posts, the valuable posts, and the stuff that people actually want to follow them for. So you can take that route, but besides that, you just got to really just be pumping out valuable information that people want to hear, read, follow you for. I mean, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, it really is a tough space, especially Instagram, where a lot of that is face value in the beginning, whereas Twitter, it's a little bit more conversation. It's a little bit more dive into who you are as a person and your thoughts. Whereas Instagram, it's like a lot. I just had a branding expert on here and he was talking about how Instagram, a lot of it is based off of a popularity contest, and how like there's Instagram's creating this social wealth gap where it's like a lot of the influencers are continuing to gravitate higher and higher, and how Instagram is basing their model now, like where it's a pay for play, but the people who've kind of up at the top are kind of like grandfathered into that. So it's becoming harder and harder, and just you guys are gaining a little bit more following, but it's good for you guys because you're able to brand and assist other people, you know, like myself, in opportunities to communicate with you guys.
Well, and I've even shifted a lot of stuff over because I've had so many people reach out to me, and I've done a lot of social media consulting for people. And that's been really good too, because I enjoy it. But it is unfortunate just kind of how Instagram works. And now it's like you have to pay for ads, or you have to play the game. You know, I mean, there's some loopholes. You can do a lot of collaborations. You can, you know, reach out to people to get on their social media. That's just one of the ways to do it. But besides that, yeah, you see a huge, huge gap. And I mean, even 4 years ago, I'd wake up with 100 to 200 more followers every day because that's just how social media worked. And now, I mean, you have to really work for followers, really work for followers. It's just not the same.
Yeah, it's literally going in there and engaging for a few hours into different people's posts, but then it's like, is the algorithm going to favor you to show you that post? And when you're messaging people with a lot of followers, you're like, are they going to see the message? Because I'm sure you're getting bombarded with like tons and tons of messages. It's like you have to craft it to a specific way. That's why, like, when I messaged you, I put Las Vegas podcast with like a few emojis, and I was like, all right, hopefully this stands out because it's very specific. But
Yeah.
you can't play the game of you know, when we're in high school and you're having a party and you send the same mass text out to everybody. It has to it has to be very specific to whoever you're targeting.
Yeah. And what's crazy is you see a lot of these people. I mean, you were talking about Linda Cohn, but you talk about people who are on TV every day, like ESPN reporters. And I've found them and they're verified on social media because I've been looking for, you know, new guests, and they'll have 5,000 followers. And it's such a sad thing that people look at followers as a sense of credibility as well, because you'll look at someone and you're like, that guy's a huge name. And he just doesn't capitalize on his social media. He's not active on it. But people don't think that he's worth anything because he doesn't have 100,000 followers. And so it's kind of interesting how that's put people on the map.
It is. It's a little bit of the face value thing. Some of the guests that I've had on here that own like a pharmaceutical company and some of these like higher level people, they have literally like 100 followers on there, but then those end up being some of the most downloaded episodes because those 100 followers are all actively engaged with them. You know, they have 100 real followers. It's not any bots or anything like that. So you do have to do a little bit more digging into it. Whereas, you know, when you see, like, you go to Kevin Hart's page, this guy who I just had on turned me on to this, he has 100 million followers, and you go into his followers account, and 1 out of like every 5 or 6 followers is fake accounts. It's like empty profiles. So you could see there's a much larger game that's being played to it.
Yes. And companies are getting smarter where they're asking people for their analytics, because those bot followers aren't going to be swiping or buying or doing any sort of engagement on your pages. And so the companies are starting to get hip to it, where before they would just see numbers and they're like, we'll offer you money to post. And it got frustrating because all these girls were getting all these paid sponsorships for buying followers. But now it's kind of transitioning a little bit, and you're seeing, you know, like I tell athletes all the time, they need to capitalize on their social media, because an athlete with 20,000 followers could go tell their followers, I am so fast because I eat dirt, and all of them would go eat dirt, versus somebody with 500,000 followers that is trying to sell some sort of protein. I mean, maybe 20% of those followers are going to buy it. Maybe. Probably not even that.
It's a crazy space. Let's backtrack it a little bit. Tell me about that. You mentioned an app that you were involved in. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's called FitPlan. And basically it's a follow along fitness app. I love working with them. It's really easy. You go in and it'll tell you the exercise. I filmed every single exercise. It'll show you the form and how it's supposed to be done, and you can track it. And then the cool thing too is if you have any questions, you can directly message me through that app.
That's cool. So do you have a firm belief that the training industry is going to transition full time into this like remote kind of personal trainer model?
I think a big chunk of it will. There are still people that are going to prefer to do it in person. Just, I think it's based on personality. Like I do a lot of online training, but I can't take every client. And some specific reasons are their physical capability. If it's somebody that has deviations as far as like injuries or knee problems that they can't squat a specific way, like I can't do that from here, and I can't do that to make sure that they're doing it safely. And there are those people that need the extra motivation where you're right there in person and you're watching them not cheat. But I do think just this pandemic as a whole has shown how much you can do from just your computer. And so these live workouts, these Zoom workouts, and these apps have really, really just done very well because you can do them anywhere and it's so easy. I just don't know the work ethic behind it if it's for everybody.
Yeah, that was going to be my next leading question was obviously through the computer, you can take on more clients, whereas like in person, it'd be a little bit tougher. So you can share your time a little bit easier, but with that, you probably lose a little bit of the integrity for the work ethic, or maybe some of the variability of the training session. Whereas like when you're in person, you can be like, oh, I can just show you this lift here. This is probably more suitable for you. Where it's like when you're at home, you're only limited to a finite amount of athletic supplies.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want to make sure their form is correct. I mean, that's like the biggest thing. And I'm a stickler with that. And that's something that I have struggled with since I've transitioned to a lot of Zoom workouts.
Yeah. When the pandemic first started, I was doing YouTube workouts and, I was fine. I was motivated for about like a month, but then I was like, man, I miss just benching or squatting. Like the weights, it wasn't the same for me. But I've seen a lot of people have a lot of success with it, and maybe a lot of people are a little bit more comfortable at home and not having to go to the gym. Because I know some people kind of their self-esteem is a little bit lowered when they're around people because they're not in the place that they would like to be.
Yeah. And fortunately, a lot of the people that are just starting out, they don't need the gym right off the bat. So it's kind of, it can also be a progressive thing. Like you can do a lot of online stuff. And then as you become, more aware of your body and you're more confident of that, then you can start going to the gym.
Slowly but surely, hopefully. Working out at the gym with a mask, it's easier. It's not terrible. It's just once you start, your heart rate starts rising and you're breathing heavy into this mask, I feel like I'm suffocated. Like I can't do this anymore.
I know.
Break. I have to pop out for a second. I'm waiting to get yelled at by the athletic staff.
Yeah, gosh. I've really transitioned to a lot of more outdoor stuff since I'm lucky I have some weights at home that I've been able to use. And then when I really need to get a lift in, I'll go to the gym. But as far as like endurance wise, I just try to stay outside.
Agreed. The pandemic is breeding the next generation of marathon runners.
Yeah.
I've picked up a lot of cardio since then. I wasn't really a big fan, but now it's just something to do where I'm not locked at home all day.
Yeah. Same. That's exactly where I'm at too.
Well, Katie, I appreciate you for doing this conversation. I always ask the guests one parting question. Okay. The question is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
Entertainment. I think it's, it has the nickname of the entertainment capital of the world, and it's 1,000% true. I think that you come here to be entertained, and that's what's so sad about this pandemic is because you've really seen the city struggle throughout all of it. I mean, like you said, I had a Jabberwocky on one of my shows, and they've been performing for 10 years, and they're there to entertain. And then you have all of the amazing restaurants, you have the nightlife, and a lot of that has just stopped. And so hopefully we can get back to it and everyone come back and visit it
soon. Where can all of the listeners find out more about you?
Anywhere, any Twitter, Facebook, Instagram under Katie Chung Hua.
She's easy to find. She's got a check mark. She's a real person.
And I didn't get that by lobbying. I got that. They let me have it.
Earned. It was rightfully earned.
Yeah.
Katie, thank you for doing this. It was a pleasure. I'm glad that we can share your knowledge on everyone. Big fan of the podcast. I advise everyone to go over to Built Podcast, give her 5 stars, follow along. There's a lot of things being built over there, and to learn more about these athletes and entrepreneurs. So Katie,
Thank you. I
thank you.
appreciate you.
Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next time.